During this Lent, as we are reflecting on the abiding love of God, which stays with us throughout all of our lives and leads us on this journey of faith, we ponder the abiding love we are called to have for others. That we are called to abide in God's love, and out of that, we cultivate a love for our neighbor, for those around us, and for those that we meet along the way, because we have been created by the love of God. We have been redeemed by the love of God, and we are sustained by the love of God. And there are many ways in which to misunderstand how the power of love calls us to act. That in many ways we misunderstand the powerful part of love, thinking more of the power of strength than we do of the influence of love. It makes me think about a clip from that age-old movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That there is a character called Sir Robin. He is a knight, and everywhere he goes, he has a minstrel that is singing his story, commentating on his every move, like a commentator of a football game, calling the play-by-play. The quarterback drops back, he looks to his left, he turns to his right, he throws a 20-yard pass to his receiver, who makes an acrobatic catch, turns around, runs 5 more yards before going out of bounds. That this companion of Sir Robin is narrating his every move, singing about Sir Robin's courage. But he talks about courage as the power of strength. That is, until Sir Robin faces true danger, and then he turns around and runs the other direction. That as we think about the abiding love of God and the power of that love, we find a very different kind of courage. We find courage found in the practice of care, concern, and assistance for others. As Ben Quash writes in his book, Abiding, caring requires a different kind of courage that is part of our abiding love for others. And we see this throughout the life of Jesus, where in his ministry, for a span of about 3 years, he is walking alongside the disciples, teaching them, ministering with them. He is traveling with them and teaching them like you teach an apprentice, so that they can continue the ministry together once Jesus is no longer with them. That it is that accompanying others that we find in care and concern, in the courage of love. And then we see it again in Jesus' passion, where he acts on behalf of others. We witness it in the passion of the cross, where the disciples abandon Jesus and he is all alone, but he still remains committed out of love for the world. It is a gift of service. It is a gift of grace. But we not only see it in his ministry and in his passion, we see it from the very beginning of his life, where we ponder the mystery of the incarnation, where the Word became flesh. But we see it in an everyday sense, what Sam Wells calls being with others. That Jesus knew what it meant to live alongside one another in a family, that he learned a language, he learned a trade skill, he worshiped with a community of faith, he ate, he drank, he slept. He shared life on this collective journey, knowing what it was like to be with others in all the ups and downs, the ins and outs, the twists and turns. That in that you find the courage of love, the practice of care and concern. You find embodied compassion in the endurance of a different kind of strength. That it is sharing the journey with others, or looking at life through the eyes of others, or standing in their shoes, or offering the gift of presence that we find. The courage of love. There are about 4 different models of care and concern, and we find wisdom for all of them throughout the life of Jesus and in the practice of worship, that we can listen to Jesus' life to learn how to care for others, and in the practice of worship where we remember that God abides with us, that God accompanies us, that God is with us in this journey. The first practice of care and concern, where we abide in love for others, sounds rather odd, but it is the gift of arguing, but specifically the type of arguing that happens in dialogue. That it sounds odd, I know, but as Ben Quash writes, arguing is closely related to prophecy. It is the type of discussion or conversation that seeks out the truth while never demeaning anyone in the dialogue. That it's taking the trouble to remain in conversation with others in a constructive way. Now, not all arguing is good. A one-sided argument is never helpful. We don't find any care or concern in a one-sided conversation. But throughout the Gospels, we overhear Jesus debating with others, arguing with others, challenging them, and listening to them in an exchange of dialogue. And as we read the parables, they make an argument for how we are to see this world, for how we are to understand it within the abiding love of God. That one way that we can care for others is through constructive dialogue that challenges, that invites listening, and that seeks the truth. But as James Forbes has said, truth will set you free, but first it will make you mad. That we open ourselves up in dialogue to seeing more of the truth in the abiding love of God, which will continue to change us and others and this world. So we practice this type of care and concern carefully. The second way to offer care and concern to others is more familiar, and that is the practice of forgiveness, which always seeks out healing, that it makes room for the image of God as physician, where the love of God comes for the sick and not the healthy. That forgiveness is a way to participate in God's grace. that it seeks out reconciliation. It calls forth compassion for this world. It puts the broken pieces back together. And it is both the giving and the receiving of forgiveness. And sometimes receiving forgiveness is harder than giving it. But it is one way that we offer our care and concern for others. The third way that we practice care and concern is through hospitality. But that means more in our faith than putting out clean towels or setting the table beautifully. That hospitality in our faith is about making room in our home for others and room around the table for others. But it's also making room in our lives for others, for friends, for strangers, even for enemies. That hospitality is the opposite of hostility. That it seeks out and it creates mutual ground. Not where everyone will agree on everything, but where everyone is cared for and everyone shares a mutual concern. And then the last way that we practice care and concern is through what Sam Wells calls being with others, which again we see throughout the life of Jesus. It's captured in that passage of John chapter 10 where Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. That the hired hand is different from the good shepherd. The hired hand runs away. The good shepherd practices being with the sheep. That the good shepherd is different from Sir Robin. Sir Robin's like the hired hand, depending only on the power of strength. And when the danger level becomes too high, the hired hand runs away. But apparently, a knight is different from a shepherd. A shepherd is committed to the courage of love, to abiding in love for others, accompanying us along the way through the power of solidarity, the strength of listening, the compassion of crying with others, and the willingness to sit in silence. That it is the courage of love by being with others that Jesus shows us and invites us to be with others by abiding in love. Amen.